I have been a skeptic of creepy paranormal things my entire life. I have never really believed in that type of stuff, but the things I have witnessed at my grandparents' farm shake me to my core. My grandparents own a large plot of land in central Missouri, and they have owned that land for around 40 years. I've been to that farm over 10 times, and every time I go, I always get this terrifying feeling that something is watching me. It's like there's always something behind my back. I have also had many strange encounters there that are downright bizarre. My first encounter with whatever the hell this thing was when I was around the age of 8. We had brought our dog named Spot to that farm. He was a silver lab that I loved dearly. I was exploring the forest behind the house, just enjoying the summer breeze, when my dog started growling. It was a deep, sinister growl that I have never heard him make. I turned around quickly to see what he was growling at, but could see nothing but forests along forests. While my eyes were scanning the area where my dog was growling, some animal shot out of the brush so fast I could barely see what it was. Before I knew it, it was gone. I sat there for what felt like an eternity, absolutely flabbergasted by what I just witnessed. From what I could see of it, it looked like a coyote, but the speed at which it moves was absolutely insane. In hindsight, it moved at like 90 miles an hour and made almost no noise. But the most creepy part was that the place it jumped out of didn't even make an imprint of where it was lying. From where I viewed it jumping up, I should have been able to easily see where it was hiding. Shocked by what I witnessed, I just decided that was enough and went back inside the house. My second encounter happened when I was around 10. I was visiting the place and, like usual, I was getting the feeling I was being watched. That first day was normal and nothing really creepy happened. I was just spending quality time with my family. But when night came, that's when weird things started happening. I was trying to sleep in the twin bed that was shared by my mum's brother when he used to live there. Then I heard tapping, not tiny little taps, but loud taps, almost like banging. This was coming from the direction of the window. I slowly sat up and looked at the window, but there was nothing, so I assumed it was just some animal or something like that. 5 minutes passed, and there was no more tapping, and I was drifting off to sleep. Suddenly, there's a very loud slam directly on the window. I'm not talking about the sound of a hand slamming on it to call for someone's attention. It sounded as if something absolutely massive collided with the window. I shot up so quickly that I nearly passed out. I decided enough was enough and grabbed a flashlight in the drawer and shined it out the window. There was nothing. About 10 long seconds passed, and still there was nothing. I was about to go crawl into my mom's bed when I heard it, a screech. It was a terrifying screech that I don't think was achievable by any human. It was so loud it pierced the quiet, peaceful summer night. I can't put it into words what that noise sounded like, but it was dark and horrible, and I still remember it to this day. I froze. I was unable to move any muscle as I was so scared. I was sitting there still as a statue, petrified by what I heard. That's when my instincts kicked in, and they told me to run into my mom's room, which I did. For some reason, I didn't wake her up. I just cuddled up next to her and didn't sleep the entire night. All I could think of was that sound, that horrid, terrible, bloody screech. My next encounter was when I was around the age of 13. I was back at my grandparents' just enjoying my time like I usually do when my grandpa suggested that we go deer watching. I agreed because I had been doing this for as long as I could remember, and it was never an issue, and it was extremely fun. So, we took the Polaris and went out at around 6 to 7 in the evening to look for deer. We decided to go into the easternmost pasture because that's usually where we spotted the most deer. 30 minutes passed, and we had seen a few deer but not as many as we usually do. This is where it begins. I get that feeling again, that dreadful feeling that something is there, in the shadows watching me. This time, it's a lot more intense, like it's right up behind me, but when I look, it's never there. However, it appears that my grandpa feels the same presence as me too. Just to let all of you know, my grandpa is a very laid-back individual. He's always joking and having a laugh. The only time I've seen him to be very serious was when my great-uncle died a couple of years ago. So, when I start feeling that I'm being watched, my grandpa goes from a happy and laid-back expression to a very serious and alert expression. He gripped the wheel so tight his knuckles turned white and was constantly looking around like to make sure something wasn't following us. He then made a massive U-turn out of nowhere and started heading back to the house. I asked him what he was doing. He replied, "We're heading back to the house." The tone of his voice was cold and serious, like he had witnessed someone being murdered. At this point, he was gripping the wheel even harder and was absolutely going pedal to the metal, full speed back to the house. I decided not to ask any questions until we got back to the house, which we did in no time at all. Once we were there, he rushed me into the house, constantly checking his back to make sure something wasn't there. When we were inside, he closed and locked the door tight. His behavior was very alarming and it really shocked me to my core. I decided that all of the stuff I had witnessed was enough and only asked him one question. "What the hell is going on here?" When I said that, he looked at me and gave me a cold expression. He calmly said, "I have some things I need to explain to you." We then sat down for 30 minutes, and he explained that this thing that was living on his property has been there since the day he moved in. He and my mother experienced the same thing that was happening to me during the first few years of living here. He explained that he has seen whatever this thing is and that it doesn't like new visitors. That's why I was experiencing all of these problems. He told me about all of the things that he had witnessed and experienced, and they seemed to have been pretty similar to what was happening to me. He told me that he knew this was going to happen to me. They were always watching to make sure I never got hurt because he knew this creature better than anyone else. We talked some more, but all of it was the same. It was now late, and he decided that I couldn't sleep alone, so he had me sleep with my mom. We luckily promptly left the next morning. I have not been back since that day. In addition to my own encounters, there are a few other weird things that happened on that farm. Recently, we brought my sister's horse there, and the first night for the horse was hell. My sister's horse has always been very friendly and not shy around humans. But on its first night, it was just bizarre. It was restless and making noise. The next morning, my grandpa woke up and was doing his usual chores. He went to go feed the horse, and he noticed that the horse was acting very weird, extremely shy and timid. When he took a better look, he was shocked. The horse had 3 10-inch gashes down its side, like something had clawed at it. It was ruled out that the horse ran into the fence, but I think otherwise. Also, around the same time, my grandparents adopted a dog and named it Panda. Panda was a Jack Russell Terrier who was 2 months of age. 5 days later, he was found dead with deep puncture wounds on his body, with his neck slashed up. They ruled it out as a bobcat or mountain lion, but I also think otherwise. I don't know what the hell this thing is, but something tells me if I go back, good things will not come. This is my father's story written from his perspective. It follows an experience he had with a Skinwalker on the Navajo reservation. When I was about 11 or 12, we lived in a small house made of mud and stone. It's a lot like our house now. It was 2 of my brothers and I in the house. Everyone else had gone to a feast and left us to tend the sheep. We were getting ready for bed when we heard the dogs going crazy outside. Thinking it was nothing more than coyotes howling in the distance, we told them to be quiet. We began to drift off into sleep, and the dogs would not shut up. Somehow, I was able to go to sleep for a few hours. Then, I woke up very late in the night. It was very quiet and still in the house, save for my brother's snoring and breathing. I realized I needed to use the outhouse and woke up my brother to take me there. He teased me about being scared, which I certainly was. We went out with our flashlight to the outhouse. The dogs began with their crazed barking out in the sagebrush, going from one place to the next. My brother went first, and I waited outside for him. While waiting, I tried to follow the dogs with my flashlight. Suddenly, there was a very loud whine from one of the dogs. Then everything went quiet again. It was really too quiet for that time of year. Not even the sheep were making noise. Suddenly, I heard a few of the dogs going completely mad by the truck. When I looked over, there was this man. He was unbelievably tall, leaning on one arm on the cab roof of the truck. He was looking at the dogs for a little and then suddenly kicking one of them. They all scattered in different directions. The thing looked up at me and I saw its face. It had a pure white face like a full moon, 2 burning red eyes, and a slight smile that was pure black. I could not move or make a sound. It began to walk toward me with long strides until it finally towered over me. All I began to see was a dark red, like the color of the blood when you cut the throat of a sheep. I kept getting deeper and deeper into its eyes. I could faintly hear my brother coming out of the outhouse. With this, the thing looked up at him. Reality came rushing back to me. I noticed that my brother was too distracted with his buckle to realize what was going on. I also noticed this thing's long hands hovering just inches from my head. Its skin was black ash, and it smelled like a bloated dead animal in summer. I was still unable to move or speak while the creature began to move toward my brother. Finally, noticing this figure, my brother became paralyzed as I was. Closer and closer it drew, reaching an arm out toward my brother's head. Something finally snapped in me, and I became unbearably angry. I broke from the trance and lunged at the thing, raising my arms like a wild animal and baring my teeth at it. A growl came out that I never knew I could make. I became angrier at the thing that was trying to hurt us and made myself look more imposing. It kept that smile at first, but the angrier I got, the more the smile faded. Finally, with everything I had, I began to make this primal roar at it. It fell backward and ran away into the night. Looking back at me, its eyes were dim and dull, its smile now long since gone. The next morning, the family returned home from the feast. After relaying the story to my parents, they quickly hired a medicine man. The creature did not visit our home again. This experience I'm going to describe has taken a while for me to get together and actually write down. I have experienced a few paranormal things, but this is the craziest one of all of them. It takes place in Yosemite National Park in August of 2017. I was with my 2 best friends, Zach and Andrew. Zach had worked that summer as a parking agent at Glacier Point and was pretty familiar with the area. The employee housing he was given was in Wawona with 2 other guys. Andrew and I were visiting for the week and had each been to Yosemite before. During one of our nights there, we decided to watch the sunset over Chilnualna Falls. It was a great hike that Zach had done before. The trail was about 4 miles to the top, with about a 2,000-foot elevation gain. We brought food and decided to hike up, take a swim, and eat at the pools on top of the falls. We set out a couple of hours before sunset. As we approached the top portion, we were about a half-mile to the top of the falls. Suddenly, a guy in his early 20s like us ran up to us from the bushes. He's frantically asking for help. His friend had fallen 50 feet off a cliff and had a shattered femur. Zach was used to this. After working in the park all summer, he had seen many injuries and was used to it. The man didn't have cell reception, but I did, so I called 911 and reported the accident, requesting search and rescue. After a few minutes, we decided we wanted to continue the hike after the search, and rescue dispatcher assured us they would be there soon with a helicopter. We told the guy help was on its way, and we continued the next half-mile up to the top of the falls. When we got up there, it was a picture-perfect scene. We enjoyed the beautiful sunset as we swam and ate. We then got an amazing show as we saw the helicopter land to pick up the injured guy we just encountered right below us. I'm a private pilot and Air Force aviator, so I loved every second of watching the helicopter land on the mountainside. After the sunset, we began the hike down and past the spot with the injured guy. The search and rescue team was taking care of him. We had a brief encounter with them, and they thanked us for calling it in. It was now dark out, and we continued the hike down. There wasn't much moonlight. It was pretty dark, so we used our phones as flashlights to see the trail. This is where the story gets interesting. The top of the hike was switchbacks with a steep incline on the right and a steep decline on the left with shrubs and trees. It was definitely too steep to hike down, hence the switchbacks. About 1 mile into the hike down, Zach was in front with a light. I was second, also shining my light, and Andrew was in the back. Zach was shining his light ahead and saw something sticking out from behind a tree that was about 15 feet ahead, just off to the right of the path. He instinctively shined the light at it. That's when whatever it was exposed itself from the tree and ran across the path, down to the left and down the steep grade. It ran on 2 feet and resembled some sort of humanoid. It was a little shorter than us and very clearly had 2 arms and 2 legs, but it moved in an inhuman way. To my eyes, it didn't look like an animal, and it resembled a person. It had a head, and its limbs appeared to be just skin with no clothes on at all. All 3 of us saw it, and we stopped dead in our tracks. We continued shining the light to where it ran, down the left side of the mountain, but didn't see anything after it ran down. We were absolutely terrified, none of us really knowing what to say because we had no idea what we saw. The worst part was that we had another 3 miles to hike down and 1.5 miles from the trailhead to Zach's house. We were worried knowing that this creature could be stalking us and was nearby. Luckily, we made it to his house, terrified and exhausted, but without harm. Whatever it was must have been just as scared of us as we were at it. I've done some research and my best guess would be a skinwalker, but it didn't try to lure us into the forest with it. We had a subsequent experience a couple of years later in Tioga Pass, right outside of the Tioga gate of the park. We were camping in a closed campground in Tioga. In the middle of the night, I woke up to piss. Before exiting the tent, I saw an orb about 5 feet from the tent, floating across with a bright light. I don't think it was a person because Zach, Andrew and I all saw the orb floating across and there wasn't anyone around us. Our friend Jackson was also in the tent and in the morning told us he felt rocks getting thrown at the tent all night, along with hearing footsteps near all night. We all know what we saw that day and we know that it was not human. Please drop a like and subscribe to Eerie Echoes for more horror stories. As always, thank you for watching.